In this video, I'm going to show you how to make delicious chocolate marshmallow fondant. Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, then I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. So I had a request recently asking me how I make chocolate marshmallow fondant, and I used to make it all the time. I don't really make it too much anymore, but you ask and it is given. So I want to show you guys a super simple way to make chocolate marshmallow fondant, and it really is delicious. It kind of tastes like a Tootsie Roll. So let's get into the video. To make this, you're going to need about 12 to 15 ounces of marshmallows. I prefer to use the bigger ones. You can use the smaller ones. It doesn't really matter. About a teaspoon, 1 to 2 teaspoons of corn syrup. If you can't get corn syrup, you can use a little bit of glycerin in place of it. This just helps with making it more elastic. And some semi-sweet chocolate chips. These are just Nestle brand. I made a video showing how I chop up my chocolate chips, but I filmed it in portrait mode, so I don't know. I can try to figure out how to put that here. It might look a little weird, but I could put in a little video showing you how I chop them up. I prefer to put them in a food processor because there's a variation in the size. They aren't just all big chips. There's some chocolate dust, there's some tiny chips, there's some larger ones. I just prefer it that way. I used to add some flour to the chocolate chips so they wouldn't sink to the bottom of my cake batter. However, I found that that is not necessary, so I no longer add flour to my chocolate chips. And a 2-pound bag of 10x powdered sugar. This is 907 grams. Now I'm going to start over the sink with my mixing bowl and a strainer, and I can find this and link this below. And I like to pour about half of the sugar into here and sift it. I have found that recently just all the powdered sugar, no matter what brand, has so many lumps in it. So I find that I have to sift all of my powdered sugar. If I don't do that, then I'm going to have these tiny little sugar clumps in my fondant, and it's a nightmare if that happens. And you see all these little clumps in here? These are the little sugar clumps that would end up in your fondant that you would end up picking out. So it's very important to sift it. And then in another bowl, I'm going to sift the rest of the sugar. And I'm going to set this one aside. And I have some shortening on a paper towel. And I'm just going to wipe some shortening all on the inside of the bowl so the marshmallows don't stick. And then I'll take some of that extra shortening and wipe it on the dough hook. Now, I eyeball everything when I make fondant. I don't go by exact measurements because it turns out a little different every time. So I have to pay attention to the consistency of the fondant to see if I need more liquid or more sugar or whatnot. So this is a 10-ounce bag of marshmallows. That was 10 ounces, and I'm probably doing like another 2 ounces of marshmallows. So I have a total of about 12 ounces of marshmallows in here. I have the corn syrup, and I'm going to add about a teaspoon, and you can measure it if you'd like. And then I'm going to add approximately a tablespoon of water. And now I want to add some of the chocolate chips. So depending on how strong you want or how chocolatey you want it to be, I have a 1/4 cup here. And I'll do just slightly more, so it's probably about 1/3 cup of chocolate chips. I'm going to pop this in the microwave for 1 minute and 45 seconds to completely melt everything. And I am washing my hands really good because I'm going to be handling the fondant. All right, now I just got these out of the microwave, and I want to stir it until everything is mixed together. And I also think that it's better to have the chocolate chips broken up in the food processor before you do this. They melt a lot faster that way. This is a really light brown color, and that is okay. But when I use brown fondant, I mean, I'm going to deepen the color a little bit just so I can show you how I do it. Or you can deepen the color after you make the fondant. It really doesn't matter. So I have some of this Buckeye Brown, and I'm just going to squeeze a little bit in there. And I have some black. Well, the label is faded, but it's Americolor black. Like 3 drops of the black, and mix that together. Now add the entire contents to the bowl. And I have this other sugar that I put in the bowl, so I'm going to add about half of it on top. And also about 1 to 2 teaspoons of Tylose powder. This is CMC powder, Wilton Gum Tex. It's all the same thing. It's going to help make your fondant smoother. You don't have to add it now. You can add it later. However, I just prefer to add it to my entire batch. So I'm just eyeballing it, but you could do about a teaspoon of Tylose powder. I'm going to cover this with a towel, lock it in place, and mix it on stir until it starts to come together. All right, so if it is really humid where you are, you may need less liquid. If it is really dry, you may need more. So this is why I say you have to pay attention to what the fondant looks like. So right now it is way too dry. I need to add a little bit more liquid. So I have some water in here. I'm gonna do another about 2 teaspoons and see how that turns out. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's starting, I always say when you're making fondant, you want it to start to gather around the hook. It doesn't have to stay on the hook, but as long as it's not sticking to the sides of the bowl, it should be good. So I can actually add a teeny bit more of the sugar. It was just a little bit more. I'm gonna cover it with the towel and mix it again. Good, so you can see the fondant is sticking on the hook as it mixes, and this is a perfect consistency. So I didn't use all of the sugar. I didn't need to. It's going to depend on how humid it is around you. Like I said, I do have a video showing you how to fix dry fondant and how to fix wetter fondant by adding more sugar or more liquid, and I will also link that in the description. Now remember, my hands are clean. I have some shortening that I'm going to put down on the countertop. And I want some shortening in my hands as well, so nothing sticks. And I'm going to remove all the fondant from the bowl and the hook. Now I just want to knead this together a couple times. And here's the chocolate fondant. So now I want to show you how to get it to a smoother consistency. Do you see how it's breaking apart right now? This is not good to cover cakes with. The fondant is not, you need to work with it a little bit to get it to be a little smoother. So I have some cornstarch here. I'm going to sprinkle that down. And I'm going to add a little bit more Tylose powder. So again, I'm going to start with about a teaspoon and knead this all together. You see the consistency of this right now? Let's set this aside for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I will come back and check on it. All right, it's been about 7 minutes, so let's check on it. Getting some Crisco in my hands and some Crisco on the counter and knead this together. It's a little bit better, but it still needs a little bit more time to sit for about another 5 to 10 minutes. All right, it's been about another 7 or 8 minutes. And this is starting to look a lot smoother. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna let it rest. I actually don't have to use this. I'm just making this for video purposes. I'll probably use it later. So I'm going to wrap it up in plastic wrap. So I'm gonna get a little Crisco on the outside. Wrap it in some plastic. And I have an airtight container here with all of my fondant. I'm gonna put it in a Ziploc bag and store it in here. And it should keep in here for about 3 to 4 weeks. So there you go. There is the simple and delicious recipe for my chocolate marshmallow fondant. And like I showed you, I'm a little extra with my little fondant label, but whatever, that's me. I keep my fondant in this airtight container. I got this on Amazon. I can link it below. And I always wrap the fondant up in plastic wrap and then put it in a Ziploc bag and then put it in the airtight container. When you do it that way, it's really going to help prevent it from drying out. I add Tylose powder, Gum Tex, CMC powder, whatever. It's all basically the same thing. I add it to all of my fondant. I add it to fondant that I'm covering cakes with. I add it to fondant that I'm using as decorations. When I'm covering cakes with the fondant, I don't add as much Tylose powder, but adding the powder to the fondant is really going to help smooth it out. It's going to take away all those weird little pock marks in it, and it's just going to make it more elastic and a lot more easier to work with. A lot easier to work with. And when I'm using it for decorations that need to dry hard, I will actually break off a piece of the fondant, add a little bit more Tylose powder to it, knead it together, roll it out, and it'll set a lot harder and it'll be a lot easier to cut little pieces or designs or decorations out of the fondant. So this probably just needed about 10 to 15 more minutes just to get to a smooth consistency. However, I'm not going to be using it. That's why I just wrapped it up and stored it for later use. And then the next time that I'm ready to use it, I will unwrap it from the plastic, put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds and flip it over and do another 30 seconds until it's a pliable consistency. Knead it together and just see what kind of consistency it is. And if it's still breaking up a little bit, I will add a little bit more Tylose powder to it. I do have a video showing you, it's actually with black fondant, but it's basically the same thing, showing you how I take a piece of fondant that is not a good consistency and add a little bit more Tylose powder to it, knead it, let it sit, and show you how to get it smooth. So I will link that in the description below. So I think that's it. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. And you can keep in touch on social media and check out my website. It's listed in the description below as well. And if you want to stick around, you can watch these two videos next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, it's cake. It's delicious. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.